Hey there, sweet friends. This is Gina. Welcome to the Rebookery channel. Today I want to do a fun little project where we just take some scraps and we turn it into a fold up, tri-fold, wrap around journal that you can cover with fabric or paper or just leave naked, I guess. So I've kind of gathered some supplies and kind of got started just a little bit. And I'm going to kind of walk you through the process that I go through. Now, there are lots of tutorials out there on how to make journals. Mine just happens to be the way that I'm making them currently, but you are welcome to and invited to use hints, tips, and tricks that I give you and mix it in with your own good stuff and come up with something that is your own. So the first thing for me is that I always like to sketch out what I'm doing. I always like to have some sort of a plan. So this is my notebook here that I have that I just keep track of all kinds of things, and I just kind of have done some sketches. And for this journal I want it to be a tri-fold, so I want it to have a front, a middle, and like a back. So if you just wanted, you know, a front and a back, you wouldn't have a tri-fold. You could just, you know, make a normal type of cover. But for this I want a tri-fold. So I just kind of sketch out some different measurements and what in my mind, you know, I think it should look like. So for this one, I haven't sketched anything out. I just kind of have gathered a couple of supplies. Okay, so the first thing I gathered was I have some signatures, and I just have two signatures here. So this journal will just have two signatures. And I have already sewed them and, you know, done little things to the paper and all that good stuff, and I've folded them, and then they have a clip right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to measure my signature. So this is going to go about 6, and I want a little bit of allowance, so I'm going to say 6, and it's going to go about 6 1/2, 6 3/4. So what that tells me is that I want this to be about 6 3/4, and then each of my panels is going to be about 6 inches or so. So that kind of just gives me a guide. What I have here is, this is just a piece of, this is actually from a wallpaper book. It's not wallpaper, it's just some of the paper that showed, like the advertisement showed what it looks like. It's kind of shiny, and it's a little bit heavier than like a normal piece of notebook paper or something, but I just need this because I'm gonna have this be my base. So I'm gonna ultimately, I can cover this with whatever I want, fabric or wallpaper or regular paper, or this one's actually kind of pretty. I could leave it the way it is. So that's why I have this paper, is this is gonna kind of be my base. So what I did was I just measured how tall this was, and I went ahead and cut it. Now I'm gonna go with my width, and I want this to be a tri-fold. So I'm going to open up one of my signatures. And so this is what a normal book would be. But because this is a tri-fold, I'm going to have a third part over here. Now the thing about my third part is it does not have to be 6 inches, because we said this was 6 inches. What has to be 6 inches is going to be this middle segment right here. That's the one that's going to have to hold in your signature if you bind your signature over here. Now you can do all kinds of different variations. I'm going to bind my signature over here. I mean, I suppose you could bind it over here and open it that way, but whatever you could do, you do you, boo. This is the way I'm going to do one. So this one right here has to be 6. I know that one has to be 6. So I'm going to kind of figure out my placement here, And what I think I'm gonna do is just kind of put a little mark, and then I'm going to put a crease right there, because that's going to be the start of my spine. So this is going to be the start of my spine. Now again, I'm just doing this without measuring all this stuff first. Some of the ones I've made before, I've already drawn out, and so I knew what my measurements were. But for this one, I'm just kind of flying by the seat of my pants here. Now, here's where my mark is. I'm going to go a little over just to give this middle segment some more space. And I'm going to crease it. Okay, so this is the essentially the back, I guess, or the middle of my book. And then this could be the front, and it can go like this, or it can go like this, whichever you wanted. So now what I want to do is I want to give some allowance for my spine, because I'm going to stitch in 2 signatures. So I don't need a whole lot of room. I would say, I'll probably go about 1 inch. So here's my crease, and what I may do is just kind of move it over a little bit. I don't want it to be too big, and then just put another crease right here. So this right here essentially is my spine, and my fold's not really straight, so I'm going to see if I can straighten this up a bit. Now, the thing about your spine is this is where you're going to stitch. So I always like to put a little extra support here, and you can do it many different ways. You can glue something here, you can layer fabric or paper, or you could put some cardstock here if you wanted. I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put tape on it. Okay, so I added some tape, just gave it a little extra strength. It's not very rigid, it's still pretty flexible, which that's okay, that's fine. This is just going to be a very loose journal. It's not going to be very rigid, it's just going to kind of be floppy. So now I have this over here, which is another spine, because we have a trifold. So what I do over here is I fold it about the same amount of measurement as I did over here, but I go just shy of it, because this is going to be the bulk of my journal, because this is where my spine is. So this is essentially the ends of the papers, so it doesn't have to be as wide as this over here. I mean, it can be. I don't necessarily do it that way. I always make it a little bit smaller. So I'm going to do the same thing over here, just kind of crease. And then I'll add a little bit of tape just to make this extra secure. All right, so there we go. Now I've got the basis for my journal. So this is what it will look like, and I can go ahead and put my signatures in, and so I can have it fold in like this, or I can have it fold like this. And it really depends on whatever way you want it. I've done it this way before, and I've done it this way before. I'm kind of looking at this, and I see that this is a little bit shorter on this side. So I almost feel like I'm going to tuck that one in and then have this one be the outside cover. I think that's what I'm going to do. Now I know this is a rough edge right here. That's fine. I'm going to fix it in just a second. So now once you have your base made, now is the fun part. You can decorate this however you want. So you want to do all of your work to the cover before you sew your signatures in. And I just use a glue stick, and if I put fabric on it, I just put glue all over it with my glue stick and then lay my fabric down and then take it to my sewing machine, and I just stitch around the edges. I usually go and do some free motion stitching on the spines just to give it a little extra strength. And you know, maybe as I'm stitching, I may put some trim. Really, I mean, this is where you get creative and you just kind of do whatever you want. I kind of patchwork it. I kind of put stuff on, and then I'm like, ooh, I want to go and add this, and I want to add a pocket. So when you do this part, you kind of need to think of your process, like, do you want a pocket? And then if you want a pocket on the inside or the outside, when you go to put that pocket in, is it going to affect what you stitched over here? So you really kind of have to plan out how you want to add things, because whatever once you put it down and you go to stitch over it, it's going to show through on the other side. So if you have a pocket over here, you put your pocket in, and then you go and add something on the back, you might have sewed your pocket shut. So you just kind of got to be cognizant of what you have going on both sides. Sometimes I will go ahead and sew pockets into my fabric first, and then I put my fabric on to my cover. So I'm going to go ahead and yeah, I think I'm going to go ahead and put some paper or some fabric on this cover. Okay, so now I have what I want for the inside. So this is going to be like a little pocket, and then this is a library card, and I didn't do anything over here because I think I'm going to wait until I get the whole thing stitched. So here's the inside, and I've just kind of held it down with glue. Now I need to decide what I want to do with this outside. So I could use the same fabric, which is totally a possibility. Or I could put something else on here. So I gotta see what what other thing I want on here. It's kind of flimsy, so I could add some paper. That would actually be really cool if I added paper. So I kind of like this. This is wallpaper. And then I have this little piece right here, but that's okay because I could add fabric or something because I'm going to want to put a sash on here. So I think what I'm going to do, so I'm just going to go ahead and cut this. And again, I'm a very messy crafter. I don't like to measure unless, you know, I absolutely have to. So if this is bothering you, you absolutely could take your time and measure and do all of that good stuff. But for me, for right now, I'm just kind of winging it and just kind of guessing. So here I want to put something, and then I also want to put some sort of a tie. So I have, this is a vintage sheet, so I'm going to put that there, and that'll be my wraparound, that'll be my sash. And then I need a piece of material here, and I want it to be something with some substance. So let me look around and see what I can find. Okay, so this is not a piece of material. This is just like, it's like a card. This went to a metric converter that I had. But the reason why I like it is because it's nice and thick. And I think that's gonna, and it's nice and sturdy. I think that's, yeah, I think that's gonna work. The first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go over and I'm gonna stitch these two together. That's what I'm gonna do first. That way, when I go to put it on there, see, if I were to wait, I would stitch right through this. So I'm gonna go ahead and stitch this down now. So I'm gonna kind of hold it in place where I want it to be. So I sewed, and I went ahead and sewed the sash on too. And now I'll just stick this on here because my glue is still sticky. There we go. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take it over to my machine, and I'm just going to stitch around all of this, and I'll bring it back and show you what it looks like. Okay, so I took it over to my machine and I just stitched around. Now people have asked, do I have a special machine that I use to stitch through heavy things? No, I do not. The machine I use to stitch through like my heavy stuff is a Singer heavy duty machine. I've talked about it before. It's not my favorite machine. It has a lot of, I don't know, I've had to take it in a couple of times within the first year, and it just had like things internally that were wrong with it, but whatever. It seems to work. And yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'm lucky, I guess. Yeah. I don't try to sew through cardboard or anything really heavy on my other two machines. I just, you know, stick with this one. I don't have any special needle or anything. I just kind of go slow and see what happens. Yes, I have broken needles before. So yeah, I don't know. Okay, so this is what the inside looks like. Okay, so now if we go back to what this is going to look like when we make it into a journal, it's going to be folded like this. So what I want to do now is I want to add some definition here to where my two spines are. So I'm just going to kind of crease them, and you won't be able to see the crease, but you can feel, especially if you put tape there, you'll be able to feel it. And then because you'll just know that it'll naturally want to bend there. So I'm going to put a crease there, and then just kind of feel, there it is right there. Okay, so now what I'm going to do, so I've got my crease. Woo, that's actually pretty cute. Totally not my normal color scheme. Definitely not, but this is just what I had sitting around. So all right, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over and I'm going to add some stitches to the spine. And you can just do this on your regular sewing machine. You do not have to do it. You could do hand stitches. I'm just going to do it because I want this to kind of have a little bit of definition. So I'm going to take it over to my machine and I will be back. Okay. So I took it over to my free motion machine, and that machine scares me because it goes really, really fast, and the needle is kind of exposed, and yeah, I'm always afraid I'm gonna stick my fingers in there. Okay, so, and it was super messy because when I was trying to push it through, my card kept getting stuck on the edge of my machine. So yeah, really, really messy, but it's okay because the one signature, this one, you're not really even going to see this because I'm going to use, I mean, you'll see it, but like this is where I'm going to stitch in my signatures. So it really, you know, it doesn't matter. And this is just a junk journal. This is just messy, so I'm okay if my stitches are messy. The whole purpose of the stitches was just to kind of give a little more integrity to that spine, and so it doesn't have to be finished or, you know, pretty or anything. Okay. So essentially I'm done with this inside. I could have put a pocket or something over here. I chose not to just because this was so thin, but you could put something there if you wanted to. And then this, like I said, will be a pocket here, and then this folds down and this is a pocket. So now what I need to do is I need to put my signatures in, and I'm gonna stitch it up, and then dun, 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 it will be complete. So this is beeswax. You can get this in the quilting section of like a craft store, and I use this because I like to put wax on my thread, and it just kind of helps it from splitting, kind of keeps it in place, and it just kind of gives it a nice finish. And makes it a little bit easier to sew. So I just take my beeswax and I run my thread through. The friction of the thread going through here creates just enough heat that it will melt the beeswax just a little bit so that it coats your thread. And I don't put a whole bunch. Sometimes you can tell if you've gotten too much because it'll cake up, but I just put it through a couple of swipes and it seems to work pretty well. And then just find me a needle. When you put the wax on it, it actually makes it easier to thread your needle too. Okay, so when I'm stitching, I always start from the bottom and I work to the top, and this one will be pretty simple because there's just two of them, and you need to decide, do you want your string on the inside or string on the outside? I think I'm going to put my string on the outside because it's just a super messy journal, and so the string on the outside just kind of adds to the messiness. So, and there are lots of good tutorials on YouTube on how to stitch your journals. One trick I've found is that if I take my sash and I tuck it in this pocket, it doesn't get in my way as I'm stitching. Okay, one of the things, one of the tricks I learned when I was learning how to bind books is that when you go to tighten it, don't pull out, pull up and down. And what that does is it goes with how the thread is in the spine, and it's not going to create larger holes. So always pull the thread that came out of this hole, pull it up, and pull this thread down. You don't want to pull straight out like that or you're going to rip bigger holes. And then I always like to just pluck out my clips, because sometimes those clips will get caught in my thread and I don't want to tie it up if I've got that caught in the thread. And then I just double knot it. Sometimes if my string is long enough, I'll put a little bow, and then I just always stick a little bead of glue right before I finish tying it. I think I am going to be able to put a bow on this. Yep. It won't be a very big one, but there we go. And then I just cut off the excess. Whoops. So there's one. Now let's do the other. So sometimes when you are making journals that have fabric, especially if like I'm using upholstery fabric, it's hard to find where my needle hole is, and I don't want to add any extra holes or make the holes bigger. So what I do is I just take another needle and I come in from the side that I can actually see, and then pull it out, and as I pull it out, I push this needle in to that hole. Just kind of guides that needle to where it needs to go. All right, so that one's through. Just kind of loop it through here. Pull my needle out, pull up, pull down, not out. Take my clips off. I think I only have one clip on that. And go ahead and tie my knot. It's been bound. Everything looks good. And now I'm going to make sure I can close it up. Loop it around. Yep, there you go. So there you go, guys. That's a quick tutorial on how to make a tri-fold wraparound journal. And let me know what you come up with, any hints, tips, or tricks that you have. And I'd love to see pictures of what you come up with. Maybe maybe put them on Instagram, and we can hashtag, we can just hashtag the Rebookery, and then let me see what kind of journals you come up with. Guys, hope you're healthy, hope you're happy. Have a great rest of the day. Bye.